Councilmember Mendez, will you please lead us in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Villaseñor.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gurrola.
Here.
Mayor Broggie.
Here.
Councilmember Austin.
Here.
Councilmember Mendez.
Here.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the agendas have been approved. Okay, moving on to item number 5, public comments. And this is a time for anybody from the public to make comments on anything that's not on the agenda. If you want to address something that is on the agenda, then please fill out a speaker request, give it to our clerk, and you can speak at the time that agenda is pulled, comes up on the agenda. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, City Council reports, recommendations, and comments. Council.
I'd just like to highlight and maybe ask for a little extra info if there is any from Tiffany about a case that we elected to join that made it all the way to the Supreme Court level, that oral arguments will be heard in less than 2 weeks. I believe it's scheduled April 22nd. Tiffany and her firm were a major part in drafting one of the briefs that accompanied that, amongst many others, I believe. It's an impressive document, about 45 pages, that really sets a good argument for the issues, legal issues and challenges that previous cases have presented in dealing with mental health issues and homeless interactions, and how those cases have kind of just almost tied our hands in some ways, especially a small town like Fillmore. So I would encourage you to read the document. If you would like a copy, it's easily available. I can send it to you via email if needed. Do you have any other, do you know who's going to be making the oral arguments? The city of Grants Pass?
So Grants Pass, and then the petitioners will be making arguments. And actually, earlier this week, the United States government submitted a brief asking for time to be able to argue as well.
Okay.
So, and there aren't cameras allowed in the U.S. Supreme Court, but they do telecast.
Right.
So you can listen to arguments, and I'm sure they will be on the news that night.
Right.
Because it affects the entire country.
And I believe they post the audio recordings of the oral arguments as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Chris, I'm sorry, the date again that that's being heard?
April 22nd. I believe that's a Monday. Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other reports, recommendations, comments from council?
Mayor, I just have one that, and this is sort of just an FYI to my fellow council members, that I will be attending a conference, a couple of them, but the first one is the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, or NALEO for short. They are having a sort of a symposium on tackling the housing crisis. And I was able to get a scholarship for that, so I'll be attending that. I believe it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, April 21st, 22nd, 23rd. So I'm looking forward to reporting back on what I learned, and hopefully some best practices and things that other communities are doing, and what other elected officials are, how they're going about dealing with housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Nothing.
Okay, then moving on to item number 7, our consent calendar. I have a motion to approve the consent.
Mayor, on that one, I would actually like to pull item, sorry, let me just look at this really quick. Item number 7D for discussion.
Okay. Any other changes?
No other changes on that end.
Okay, so then with that one revision to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. We'll take item number 7D first, since we pulled it off the consent. And do we have any staff available to report on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I can give you a brief summary, mostly just in the tables. The State Housing and Community Development Department requires that all cities report the status of their housing element. And you've heard about the different workshops. You participated in the workshops with getting our housing element updated and adopted. You've probably been asking yourself, well, what are the real numbers? Where are we in terms of housing? Are we meeting those RENA requirements? You've heard about RENA requires a certain level of very low, and moderate income housing, as well as market rate housing. So we are tracking those numbers, and then those numbers are submitted to the state every year as part of what they call the annual progress report. So this is a report on the 2023 numbers, and it's meeting the housing element timeline of 2021 to 2029. Even though it's still not officially adopted, we're still tracking per those numbers. And I can take questions, but I can just give you a brief summary of numbers. This is what's in the staff report. That breaks down what our progress is thus far, and this is based on building permits only, so this doesn't track anything else that may be in the pipeline or previously approved as an entitlement. This is just strictly a building permit is issued, so they have a vested right to go ahead and construct these projects. So that's the only number represented in the report to RENA that really factors into meeting our goals. I went ahead, and then if you want to drill down on that a little bit, this is a breakdown of the income levels. So the RENA numbers, that's the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. I use the acronym because in planning, that's our typical language. But this breaks down what all those income levels are. And then if you wanted to drill down a little bit further, I went ahead and added units that are in our entitled and pipeline. So if you wanted to see maybe a little bit more of a projection that goes beyond the annual progress report, down there below shows where we would be if Riverview Garden comes through and starts construction, Fillmore Terrace, which has been entitled but not yet submitted for building permits, and Creekside is close to getting entitlement, so that's kind of more of a pipeline project. But those are all providing housing that meet RENA, and this table shows we would exceed market rate, and we're close on low income, and very low income we exceed, and we're still lacking moderate. I'll take any questions.
I have a quick question. The income levels, those are based on a family of four, isn't it? I think
I don't-
that's what it is, but I'm not
Okay.
sure.
I think
Based
it's-
on a family of four?
It's household,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's household income?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
I just had a question on the in the table for low. There's a minus 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain?
That was a
what
placeholder dash. And that,
Okay.
as we were going through the editing, it was supposed to be deleted, and it got left in there. It's just, sorry,
just a dash.
typo.
Oh, it's a typo.
It's a dash,
Okay.
not a minus.
I thought it was.
Bring that
And
slide
then I
back.
thought maybe they were given and then taken back. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Can you bring that slide back up?
Sure.
You may see it, but yeah, there we go.
Okay.
So which one was that we were,
It was in the table for low, under.
It's,
oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
it's fixed
okay.
here.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that
okay.
18 and you see these
Right.
dashes. One of those dashes was a residual from editing.
Okay.
One of the low-income units entitled in 2023, I believe.
Yeah, you didn't sell in 2023, so it adds up to 61. There's not a negative 18 factored into that 61.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And I just had a couple of comments on it.
Sure.
So I know we're making really good progress, obviously, on the above moderate, and like you said, very very low.
Mm-hmm.
But moderate is an area where we're not so much.
Yep.
And I saw that one of the recommendations in the report is for to see if we can look at the do some research on the rental rates of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, that have been constructed in town here since 2021. and so that thinking that if those rates happen to fall under either moderate or low-income housing, those could contribute to the RENA
right.
numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and HCD, describes ADUs, or Housing Community Development Department describes accessory dwelling units as, meeting low-income, moderate-income type requirements. But in order to get credit for that and meeting your RENA numbers, you have to actually prove out what the actual rents are. So we don't have a mechanism right now to survey and get what the rents are, but it may be worthwhile if, at your direction, staff could start to maybe contact these property owners and just ask them to complete a survey and let us know what the rents are. Or if maybe folks coming in are applying for an ADU permit, we could have it as a question on the application perhaps, is, who do you expect to rent to and what do you expect the rents to be? That might help us kind of understand a little bit better about how the ADUs are playing into these numbers.
Right.
Because right now, they're just shown as market rate. So they're captured in that market rate number, but if we can move them into moderate.
And see what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, and so sort of from what you just discussed right now,
Yeah.
I think, one of the key word is how do we, what is the evidence, or how do we prove that these are the right numbers, so to speak, for the rent, right? So
Yeah.
it's sort of a, whatever's reported out.
Yeah.
It's almost like sort of I guess my question is on the verification process, but
Yeah.
maybe that'll come out in the research
Yeah.
of how can we truly verify that if you take a survey of landlords and they say, oh, I'm, charging $1,500, which I know no one's charging $1,500, or
Right.
like 25 or above.
Yeah.
How do we really assess what's being charged out there? Because there's a lot of rentals going on that are, a lot of word of mouth, a lot of
Yes.
handshakes, a lot of cash payments.
Yes.
So that should be interesting to see what we can do to truly verify that things are either low income, that
Yeah.
ADUs are a low income or moderate income.
Yeah. And a lot of it may be, a lot will have to do with the honor system.
Yeah.
But, once they do start to disclose information and we kind of go, oh, well, that's a different category that we hadn't thought of. And maybe we should, find that out. If someone's getting Section 8 rent, but a landlord is charging them an incremental difference more, that would be illegal. And maybe we would, we would start to find out what is really happening in the community. And sometimes when you look at these RENA numbers, it's numbers, it's data, it's put together by SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, which is sort of a pseudo government agency, and they're putting together formulas to create these numbers, but it doesn't always represent what's happening in the community. So we want to be close to what's actually happening in the community and kind of know, what does it really mean? What are these ADUs? Are we meeting a goal or a need in the city? Because it's all about meeting the city's need more so than just meeting those numbers. We want to know what we are really producing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so along that lines, but I just had a suggestion on this. I'm glad that you're going to be doing that research. I'd like to see if there could be a parallel looking how we really need to fulfill the moderate in some sort of way, encourage the moderate in some sort of way. If there can also be at the same line of doing research on what's happening with ADUs, also research on what maybe other communities have done here in California to attract builders who will do moderate, or working with affordable housing agencies that usually do low income but will move up to moderate.
Yeah.
Just to see what can happen in that area. I'd love to get some more information on that. That would be great. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I think there is some peripheral interest that moderate might work, in some cases, but there's running numbers. It'll all depend on, purchase price of the land, and it would seem that moderate rental would be higher than low-income rental, so it would seem like it would pencil, but we'll hear from the developers. Yeah. Once they see these numbers, hopefully they'll come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Brian, along those lines, we're talking about future developments. I mean, we're so limited on space to develop now. We've already got North Fillmore moving forward. So what happens when we literally run out of space and we can't bring in builders to build in low income? Is that in the foreseeable future, or is there plans for that?
Ultimately, it'll depend on the market conditions, but ultimately the city is going to run out of space. We don't have a very easy ability to expand the city limits. We're constrained by a lot of different things. But what would happen is that the infill would get more dense. So the developers would look at the density allowances, and so they would start to get more vertical.
And so I hear about that, and I'm sure
Yeah.
everyone is hearing stories about other communities where they are building vertical. And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a mandate from Sacramento.
Yeah. Yeah, they get the density bonus to increase above your height restrictions. There's not a lot of pressure on Fillmore at the moment, and right now we're showing that we have a sufficient amount of land dedication way beyond the 415 that RENA requires today. I think our numbers in the housing element, in our zoning, we account for 1,200 units, 2,000 units, something like that. So we're way north of having the actual land dedicated. Then whether the developers come and build or not will depend on the market. But we're here. We have the space to meet the state's requirements. So it'll be the build pressure and the demand for housing in the future. But it will have to go more dense. If it comes our way, it will have to go more dense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless someone changes the land use laws like SOAR or things like that constrain the city's perimeter.
The number you just referenced, I think it might have been in a report about 1,210 housing units. It's more of just an assessment of available space more so than any projects that are currently on the books. Versus, I think that number was that 415 number, or maybe the requirements number. So we have the expandability within the current RENA numbers, but those RENA numbers are only projected out through 2029.
Right.
And those don't have a definitive end date. RENA doesn't have an end goal in mind necessarily, right? It's kind of a shifting target.
We have to show on paper that we can accommodate those numbers of units. And on paper, we accommodate that plus times 300 on paper. So we meet the RENA requirement for the 415, whether it actually gets built or not. So we're tracking building permits as criteria as to whether we're actually hitting the 415,
right?
Whether we're actually issuing those building permits. And some of the way that the state has enacted laws to streamline you to get to building permit process, such as SB 35 and some SB 330 and some of the other ones where they enacted under what they call the Housing Crisis Act in 2019. So some of those state laws are forcing us to expedite and allow concessions, allow waivers on local development standards. But once we hit the 415 actual construction, we have a little more teeth in our zoning code.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then potentially those numbers would update.
Yeah, then in 2019
later.
We'll get a new number, and it will come from SCAG. Yeah. 415 is a relatively low number. Oxnard's like in the 5,000. Most of the cities surrounding are well in the thousands.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a lot more square miles in Oxnard than we have here.
Yeah.
They don't have to go up yet.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I do have one question just about the request about studying rent. Specifically mentioned ADUs, and one of the biggest complaints I hear about ADUs is that it kind of crowds current space, especially if you add something to an existing property. Has there ever been a develop or thoughts about creating the opportunity to just have primary residential tiny homes in a build, which are considered kind of prefab, but a lot of times higher quality than maybe a typical prefab home? Something that I think in the early 1900s or late 1800s, it was like Sears had catalog homes that you could just kind of order and plop on a piece of land. Has that ever kind of been considered or looked at as a way to increase density but allow for better use of land? I'm just curious whether that would meet that intent and potentially even provide an option for builders to attack the single family option without having to build a large complex.
We don't have an ordinance right now for what you would call tiny homes, and honestly, I don't know enough about those to know if you would have a tiny home per lot, because we do still have minimum lot sizes, and we still do have minimum bedroom sizes and things like that to make it a livable type home. So we don't currently account for what would be a tiny home. We still have demand for single-family homes, so we haven't looked at converting a zoning on land to allow higher density on our single-family lots. But you would pick up a lot of density on the multifamily zone lots. I suppose someone could do a small home or a tiny home. We'd have to look at it, but right now our code doesn't allow for it.
Okay.
But
I thought we had passed one about a couple of years ago about allowing ADUs
Right.
on single-family homes that are existing right now. Didn't we, Kevin?
I think his question though is not ADU though, it's tiny homes as a separate,
Right.
as a primary
it's the same,
use.
It's the same
It could be-
unit per se, but it would be a standalone and kind of the ability for somebody to purchase a property
Yeah.
or even purchase and rent something that's very small.
Well, an ADU is just, it's in the name, it's an accessory dwelling unit.
Right.
So it's accessory to a primary house. So you still have to have a primary house in order to have an ADU. You don't just build an ADU.
I misunderstood.
That would
what
be
he was saying.
substandard to
I
a,
thought he was saying a single-family dwelling
Yeah.
unit that was on there with an ADU.
I think maybe a tiny home might characterize as what would be an ADU
Yeah.
only by itself, as
Right.
opposed to having a single-family home and an ADU.
But a developer could always propose a zone change to allow that if they wanted it.
Right. Okay.
I would think a builder would be apprehensive about using, let's say they have, 20 acres to develop on. Beneficially, financially, they would not benefit by having a whole lot of ADUs or tiny homes, even if it was zoned for that.
Yeah.
But financially, they would be on the short end of it.
Yeah, I mean, we'd still want to see driveway with parking and garages, and you'd
Right.
still want to see the neighborhood function
Right.
as a neighborhood. So it would, an ADU would take up, pretty large piece of lot with little livable space. But, that would all be, a developer would have to come up with something that pencils for them and
Right, yeah.
change
just-
our zone.
We,
Yeah.
we've kind of heard the argument about, what the limits are for builders to be profitable, to
Yeah.
be able to kind of attack the lower income levels, but still turn a profit. So I'm just curious of whether that could be looked at as a potential to meet those goals without.
And I would rather see that than going vertically
Right.
to meet these RENA numbers.
Yeah.
So anyway, food for thought.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if maybe that could be
They-
something that's looked
there-
at in the ADU research.
There may be a way to develop a single-family home, a relatively small, I wouldn't call it a tiny home, that could, along with an ADU, that could be considered low income, or it could be deed restricted as low income.
Okay,
Without necessarily having the tiny home, but it would still meet our requirements.
right.
So we could get there under our code if a developer's creative enough.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
All right. Interesting discussion. Okay.
yeah.
Any other comments, Miss? All right, then, going back to our agenda now,
But we still have to move for this one, correct?
Oh,
To accept it?
I'm sorry?
So,
We still have to pass this one.
Mayor, I think
I'll
we
make
need
a
to.
motion to receive and file.
Sorry, just a clarification, Mark, on that one. With the recommended additions to the research?
Yeah, I think. yeah.
Okay. All
Okay, I
right.
have a motion and a second with the amendment.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Move on to item number 8, new business, 8A. This is authorization to purchase and install furniture for the Administration and Finance Department's office reconfiguration, the senior office reconfiguration. So I will turn that over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, residents of Fillmore. Let me just bring up the PowerPoint. Did it go? It's right over here. Perfect. So, tonight requesting council to consider approval of two separate purchases. One of them would be executing a contract with Omnia Partners in the amount of $68,766.62 for furniture and installation of $4,886.47. And in addition to that, authorized purchase orders in the amount of $2,000 and $3,000. This would be for electrical and IT-related costs if the project gets approved. An office reconfiguration for the administration and finance departments will contribute to a fulfillment of the city's key results area organization excellence. The project was established to address workspace needs within the administrative department and also finance department. We have had a couple of positions that were increased, and also we're suggesting that those positions that have more contact with the public, that they be relocated to the second floor main area. And so I'm just going to walk you through on what the project will look like. And so this is the second floor, the main lobby area. The layout will allow 4 individuals to have their own private stations on this area here, while being able to communicate with each other and collaborate as needed, but also have the necessary electrical outlets and data ports installed. But it will also allow us to have visibility here to respond to any of the public interaction that may come through. As you know, we don't have a counter public space similar to the one that the planning department has, so we would like to have that installed upstairs, and eventually have a door also that would separate what's like employee access only and then the public access. So this is another view of how the counter would look. Lower transactions will also allow the counter to sit at and be ADA compliant as the required heights. And we would have an attached work surface area right behind here for any sort of paperwork that we might have to have the constituent filled out and so on. The panel design, they're 67-inch high and they're partial glazed on this area, on the south area, and then 53 inches height, partial glazed on the area that interface with the public, so that there could be visibility as well if there's someone coming. The idea also is to rotate the breaks and lunch breaks so that there's always coverage while the employees are taking their lunch break and someone is available to attend to the public needs. This is how the workstation features would look. Each station will have a 72 wide and 30 dense height adjustable desk and monitor arms. They'll be all ergonomic, and we're trying to reduce the amount of paper and have a lot more of digital electronic backups with the infrastructure that we have been updating from IT. So hence why there's a much smaller desk there for filing, because the idea is to file it up electronically in the cloud. And then there'll also be a tack board here, which will allow it will help with the sound from sharing the room with the space with the other stations. So this is just a 2D layout, just to kind of give you an idea of how that would look like. In addition to that, we're proposing that one of the offices, which is on the back of the second floor, be constructed for the senior management analyst. This position handles a lot of classified, confidential information, payroll, a lot of HR information, legal files that sometimes we have to deal with. And so we're proposing that there's a door to make sure that we keep that separated from just being able to documents just being left on the table and someone reading something that they're not supposed to be looking at, and so on. And it will also allow us to have a small conference room, so if there's a need for us to meet with an employee privately, we can do it in that conference room and not necessarily take the Public Works conference area or the other conference room, which sometimes you use as well. This is just pretty much providing you, so this is how the workspace looks like now, and then this would give you an idea of how it would look. We decided to do it on that particular area because the panels that we currently have, they're about 25 years old, and we don't have access to the manufacturer anymore. And so we wanted to make sure that so that it flow correctly, and if we were to build the door on this area here where her office is currently, then the panels wouldn't flow nicely with the rest of the wood panels. And so this area here is on the back, and so it's a bit of a separation, and the colors will still match with, the rug and make it look synchronized. So now moving to the finance department. This is how the area looks like now, and we do have a accountant job that was filled, and we have a new person working in that position. So we are requesting for a cubicle to be created in that area there, as you could see in the slide. And then that's just upon the removal of the existing ladder of files, there'll be a new station built up, and that's how it would flow. And that's just a 2D layout of the office itself. And I'm sorry, this one is for the other office, for the accounting supervisor office, just to relocate her. Right now, how she is, or the position is, when you enter to the office, you're kind of giving your back to staff, and so the plan is that staff can just come and ask for more questions, or if they need a meeting with that position, then it's just a bit more welcoming. So we're just reconfiguring how the furniture is and just buying new furniture in that area. So here are the furniture finishes. So we're trying to keep the aged cherry for the desks so that it matches the rest of the furniture that we have at City Hall, and then just using those colors to make sure that it matches a bit with the carpet, and it just continues the feel that we have. And the purchasing would be done through Omnia. They are a cooperative purchasing organization, and so we are getting a good price for the furniture itself. We are required to pay prevailing wages under government code because it is considered a public works project, although it's just furniture, so that does increase a little bit the cost. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions. The allocation that we are requesting you to consider tonight for the grand total of $73,766.02 would be coming from ARPA, which would be a one-time funding. That has been calculated for and accounted for. There is still fund available if you decide to approve this tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for staff?
I have one question. You did mention, and you may have already answered it, the finishes. Was there not an option to kind of keep the cherry, even like a veneer on the panels? No?
No,
Okay.
they no longer make those panels. I did try.
I know, and probably not identical. Just curious though whether
Yeah.
the other panels.
That was the closest we could get, and I tried to see if there had anything that was, they don't, unfortunately.
Second question, is there a plan for the old furniture to be either utilized or donated?
A lot of that furniture, unfortunately, is falling apart.
Okay.
And so I don't think they will be able to salvage it. We tried to move one a couple of years ago and ended up breaking a part of it, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of the overhead bins are falling too.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any speaker requests on this agenda item? Okay, although, I do have one comment before we move on with this. Looking at, I think it was the second video, the one of the larger space upstairs,
For the
where you have
administration
the
space?
4 cubicles.
Yes.
Yeah,
This
so one question I had, the convenience of having the counter space for the public to come, is it somebody, a staff person from one of these 4 cubicles is going to walk out and around to the back side of that counter?
That's the idea. Or if they're coming to, for example, see Troy or see me, then we would come out there. Obviously, if we have an appointment, we would take them into a conference room. But the idea is to, because a lot of the foot traffic that we get, a lot of times is for Parks and Recreation. And so the idea is to have the Parks team here. And we also get a lot of questions for like encroachment permits. And so like that's the first front line for Public Works, right? And then we're still considering moving, potentially, we haven't decided that, have either the deputy city clerk or someone else up here.
Yeah, I went through 2 remodels at the government center, and we use tri-counties, the same, same furniture, the same dividers, everything. And one thing that I know they do provide, it wouldn't work on these walls right now, and this is just, I'm just throwing this out there, and I'm sure you probably were already aware of this, but for lower partition walls, they make the countertops, well, similar to what you see here, but so in the many cubicles I worked in at the government center, the walls were lower, it had a surface like this that was probably almost chest high. But I mean, certainly people could approach, and they, I had people at the counter all the time at my cubicle because of that counter. But I'm just wondering whether that would be more feasible for you, and just thinking for convenience sake. And you've probably gone through so many iterations of this that
We did change it like 4 times on the poor guy. He's like, the last email was like, please no more changes. But one of the things, though, that we were going back and forth is just making sure that everyone has adequate space or like similar space. And so if you provide the counter space there, which I think it's a great idea, but then that means that only those 2 cubicles will have access directly to the front. And so to make it equal, like the idea was, well, how can we help you? We could still see you rather than ringing that little bell that we have right now, and just make sure that that space area is kept clear so that it's welcoming. And then if we have paperwork, and eventually the idea is to probably have a kiosk close by there for like any sort of transaction that we might go digital. And so if someone needs access to or help with the transactions, then we can make sure that we have the space to do it and accommodate that request.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like it's going to work for you and staff, then I thought I'd throw that out there. And I think that's the only question I had. So do I have a motion on this?
Sure, I'll make that motion. That our city council appropriates the amounts, authorize the assistant city manager to execute a contract with Omnia Partners for $68,766.62 for the installation and for the removal of furniture. And also authorize the assistant city manager to execute the purchase orders for $2,000 for electrical costs and $3,000 for IT related to this.
I second.
I have a quick question. Can you repeat your motion, Christina? It was $68,766 plus the installation for $4,000. You see that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that was the total of those 2 different.
Right. The grand total is $68,766 and 62 cents. That includes the furniture and the installation for $4,000. $4,886 and 47 cents.
I still second.
I think she got it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, this matter passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8B. This is a public hearing, but we'll open up the public hearing after we hear from our staff. This is consideration of zoning ordinance amendment 24-01 and resolution number 24-3991, adopting a business park master plan amendment. Prohibiting self-storage and recreational vehicle storage uses within business park zone and business park master plan area, and findings of CEQA exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this is for zoning ordinance amendment 24968, for zoning ordinance and a specific plan amendment to the Fillmore Business Park Master Plan. It was presented to the Planning Commission and recommended by the Planning Commission for your body for approval. The background on this is that staff has, over the past year plus, been receiving a significant amount of inquiries into storage, in particular RV storage in the city. So we went through and looked at, where this is being proposed and what do our laws allow and what's our zoning ordinance say. And we might try to analyze a little bit better what the city's long-term goals are that are spelled out in this general plan, and economic growth and land use patterns and things like that. So zoning ordinances are often amended from time to time because they're not meant to be a straitjacket on the city. They're meant to be looked at by staff periodically so that we're able to make rational land use decisions going forward and still meet the goals of the general plan. So that's what this is a zoning ordinance amendment to look at our text right now, look at what's being allowed, look at the market, what's being demanded of us, and see what really makes sense for the city. So the business park is in particular what's being considered tonight. Business Park BP1 and BP2, which currently allow for RV and self-storage. And there are large swaths of land down there that are getting demand for RV and self-storage. It's not what was intended to go down there, and in the general plan land use element, it provides goals, future goals of the city. So these are very long-term. The general plan is a very long-term document that staff is the watchdog of to see that the city's going in the right direction over time. So sometimes it's a bit painful to try to get, the general plan or the municipal code or the business park plans implemented, but it does require amendments to the zoning code. The general plan, it has, it's encouraging economic growth, economic development, enhance the gateways, encourage uses that would expand the city's skilled employment base while minimizing environmental impacts, aesthetics. These are just some of the key words that are identified in the general plan. And when we look at the general plan's overall vision for the city, and we see the existing RV and self-storage throughout the city, and we look at what other cities are looking like and how they're treating their commercial corridors, we're realizing we need to safeguard ourselves from this use, particularly in the business park, because the business park is intended, as outlined here in BP 1 and 2, to have employment opportunities, a variety of retail and commercial uses, focused future of employment. So those are the kinds of things that we looked at, and we don't see this intent being met with RV storage. RV storage and self-storage is very low in employment. They're very automated. There aren't skills being brought in. It's just storage. So the city has an abundance of storage. We'll get to that. When we look at the business park master plan goals, we try to look at what, let me go back here. Look at what the intent of the business park master plan was. So when this was written 20 years ago, it didn't know what the market was going to be in 2024. So, but it did outline goals that are timeless. And those are state-of-the-art business park for equality of businesses, economic development responsive to market conditions, increased employment opportunities, expanding the city's skilled labor base, ensure compatibility, minimize environmental impacts, create a gateway to Fillmore on both sides of the town along the highway, improve access to the business park, allow for a mix of land use that support the master plan. This is the business park zone here. You're all familiar with it on the west side of town. We also looked at existing and proposed RV self-storage facilities and mapped out approximate sizes and where they're located throughout the city. So we have currently a combined total of about 28 acres. Those are the primary ones that we've identified, and those are mapped here. The red is existing. Red existing does not necessarily mean permitted or not permitted. It just means we looked around town and saw this is where this use is occurring. So that acreage is captured in the number that we evaluated. And then the yellow is where we've had significant inquiries about self-storage and RV storage in particular. And a lot of the calls are coming from real estate brokers who say the only interest they're getting on these properties is people wanting to do RV and self-storage. And we realized that the reason we're getting a lot of that is because other cities are changing their codes to limit and reduce their allowances for RV and self-storage. So then one of the things we looked at was, how many self-storage facilities do we have per capita? And according to this ratio, there at the bottom, the 0.0036 is significantly higher than any of the surrounding cities. So we have more numbers of total storage facilities per capita than any of the other surrounding areas. And this just helps to illustrate that. So that's just number of facilities. And then we drill down into we have a lot of them, but what's the total area? And it turns out that the total area is also disproportionate. We've got over 30 acres of storage and over the total city acreage of, north of 2,100. And then again, that ratio of 0.01459 is significantly higher than other cities in the surrounding area. So the facility area per city acreage is also disproportionate to the surrounding area. And this helps to illustrate that. And then when you compare the area to total population, if we have the 30 acres and we have a total population of close to 17,000, that ratio is a lot higher than any of the other surrounding cities. We do understand an RV storage facility was closed down recently in Moore Park, and that had pushed a lot of the demand out here to open up storage or RV storage here. So that was one specific item that we know of that increased the demand for storage in Fillmore. Specifically, one of the code changes in the municipal code, as shown here, is to make self-storage and recreational vehicle storage not permitted. And then we also help to clarify what would be allowed storage, because right now the code just reads as though you could store anything in the open air on site, but we amended that to say it needs to be within a structure and that it would require a conditional use permit, so that we would still seek all of the land improvements, landscaping, everything you would want to see to beautify the site. That's also now, we'll go through a CUP process. We added a definition of self-storage. So our ordinance currently didn't define it, so this helps to define what the use actually is. And we also added a definition of warehousing and distribution. So you're still allowed to do warehousing and distribution in the business park, so that this helps to make a distinguishment between those two types of uses. In the business park master plan itself, we would add a simple sentence as shown here to section 2.5. Self-storage and recreational vehicle storage uses, including new uses and expansion of existing uses, shall be prohibited. So that way the specific plan and the municipal code will be consistent. So it'll be clear to anyone doing their research and doing their due diligence that we won't have confusion about which document governs. They'll both be the same. This zoning text amendment is exempt from CEQA. Staff's recommendation is that you receive the staff report, conduct a public hearing, discuss the proposed amendment, the ordinance, and the specific plan amendment, and approve the first reading to introduce Ordinance 24968, amending the Fillmore Business Park Master Plan to prohibit development of new or expansion of existing self-storage and recreational vehicle storage uses within the BP zone, and adoption of exemption from CEQA, and approved City Resolution 243991 to approve the specific plan amendment to revise the Business Park Master Plan to expressly prohibit the new or expansion of existing self-storage and recreational vehicle storage uses in the Fillmore Business Park Master Plan area and adoption of an exemption from CEQA. I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, I'll let council ask questions of staff, and then we'll open up the public hearing.
On The land use activity, looks like it's item number 9. I can't remember if it was on the presentation, but it's in our report. There's a mention of household goods. Is there potential that we could shore up exactly what that is? Is it meant for retail household goods, or is it just storage of personal household goods? What page of the staff report? Page 4, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, the matrix, okay. Yeah, so storage within a structure of household goods. So, that could be anything, furniture, microwaves, ovens.
But not for retail.
Or was the intent for retail? That's the part I was kind of wondering.
It could be we would allow retail use down there. Yeah, commercial
Right.
retail use that wanted to sell household goods, absolutely.
Right.
But this is just if someone were storing it, to maybe ship out, if they're a wholesaler and they're storing it in a warehouse to ship it to retailers, this would be allowed to be stored.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's intended for the commerce related to
Yeah.
household goods, not self-storage of household goods, or even, let's say like, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. There's many storage companies that might ship a container to a home and then move it to store it in another location. That's not what is meant by this household goods. It's meant for
It's meant for warehousing
kind of
warehousing
purposes.
goods that could
goods
be
for resale or anything.
yeah,
like that.
resale or shipping.
Could that be tweaked just a little bit to specify that a little better? Because in my mind, it went right to the storage stuff, which seemed contradictory to me. But
I thought it did differentiate between the two.
Well, we have warehouse and distribution, and then we have self-storage, which is individuals coming and storing goods there. But the storage itself would relate to, say, one business operation
right.
that does storage. And this is one specific use that's outlined there. There are a number of other things that are listed in our use matrix that are commercial-oriented or office-oriented and things like that.
Okay.
So this is meant to be distinguished from all of those other types of things.
Right. Okay.
Does that answer
You've
your
answered my question. I just want to make sure that it's clear in the way it's written. I was confused, but if it's clear to everyone else, then maybe I just read it in an odd way.
If I can just chime in, I think taken with the top half of that matrix, right, part number 8, saying that self-serve mini storage is now turning to not, or NP, right? Prohibited. Right.
Correct.
Those two together.
Correct. Yeah. But what I was talking about was not self-serve. It was where it's moved for you. So that's kind of where I was getting that.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. But thank you for clarifying that portion
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Any other
Okay.
questions for staff? Okay, then I will open up to public hearing. Do we have anyone from the public wanting to comment on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and go back to council for a motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion. I recommend that the city council, let's see here, approve the first reading of ordinance number 24-968, zoning ordinance amendment number 24-01, a zoning ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fillmore, California, amending section 6.04.1203 and section 6.04.9610 of the Municipal Code of the City of Fillmore to prohibit development of new or expansion of existing self-storage or recreational vehicle storage uses within the business park zones and fine of exemption from CEQA. And that's part 1. And part 2 is approve the City Council Resolution number 24-3991 to approve specific plan amendment 24-01 to revise the Fillmore Business Park Master Plan to expressly prohibit the new or expansion of existing self-storage and recreational vehicle RV storage uses in the Fillmore Business Park Master Plan, and also adoption of an exemption from CEQA.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, then this agenda item passes. Thank you. All right. That concludes our new business. We move on to item number 9, committee, commission, and board reports. And I'll turn it over to council.
Okay.
Anybody have anything to report?
Mayor, I do have a report. I did attend the Ventura Regional Sanitation District meeting. Just a short report that Cal Recycle made their annual inspection of the Tolan landfill, and it passed with flying colors. So things are looking well for Tolan. I think I've said this in previous meetings, but much unlike our landfill to the east of us, Chiquita, which is dealing with many problems, Tolan is running well. And some other good news is that they were able to get a new compactor, and that was a savings of $800 and some thousand to them. It was a compactor that was meant to be for another landfill somewhere else in the United States, and was sitting at a Caterpillar yard in Texas, and they were able to procure that without having to go through just ordering a new one and all of the delays of shipping still from the pandemic. So that's a good thing. There was a good savings for the sanitation district this last month.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
On April 30th, as kind of a auxiliary to our Economic Development Committee, we're going to be participating in a downtown project mapping workshop with a consultant. We do have a few members of the community who had kind of worked in the past that are going to be involved, but that doesn't mean that you can't still provide us with information, us meaning myself and Councilmember Mendez, who will also be there as part of the Economic Development Committee, because we'd like to start with downtown and hopefully see where it goes there, because as we see development through other parts of town, we definitely want to have a foundation that we can hopefully grow on, especially with anything that we implement here in the downtown area. So that's on April 30th at 11 a.m. We'll be meeting here.
Is that open to the public? Or is it just, no?
Yeah, it's going to be recorded or broadcast, right? So, but that'll be something that we can receive feedback or receive inputs from as council members to take to the committee.
Because this is somewhat of a newly formed committee, can you or perhaps our city manager elaborate on what the goal is and what you're doing with downtown?
That's kind of what I think this meeting is for, is to take the reports that we received from the consultant and then establish kind of a plan, right, Dave? Yep.
Yeah, the downtown plan we had approved a couple of years ago, one of the items is to take a downtown area, and they are going to be, we reached out to 5 property owners, business owners within the area, to come and have an initial discussion. Some of the topics we talked about is tourism, what are we going to do, and there's other angles within the group to kind of spread off and do different assignments. So the consultant's going to lead us. We're going to have the core group of individuals there, and we're supposed to do assignments to move forward with the downtown core, and that can then spread out overall. And we will notify city council and the public what took place as we move along the process.
Right.
Great.
And the purpose was to provide the opportunity for me as a member of the Economic Development Committee to, again, give me inputs, and also Councilmember Mendez. But again, the meeting itself would be difficult to move on if we had it completely open to everyone.
Right,
But,
yeah,
but
I
we will be
understand that.
reporting on it at future meetings. Yep.
Okay. Anything else to report on?
I just wanted to make an announcement. On April 10th at 10:30, the League of California Cities is going to be having their Planning and Community and Development Department business meeting. And it's going to be via Zoom. I have the code and the meeting code if anybody would like to get it. I'll share that
Sure.
information. And the agenda, I also have the agenda. So we're going to be talking about community services, environmental quality, governance, transparency and labor relations, housing, community and economic development, public safety, revenue and taxation, transportation and communication and public works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then I will turn it over to our city manager for item number 10, his verbal report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First thing is we're still looking to hire lifeguards for the pool season. Please contact Erica Herrera at 805-946-1712 if you're interested in participating and working at the pool this summer. Also, Saturday, April 27th is Earth Day here in the city of Fillmore. We'll be in front of City Hall from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We will have a number of vendors out there as well, work on Earth Day celebration and pass out different activity and to do different events out there as well. And then if you're following us on social media, we're doing updates on all the current park projects. Currently, right now, we're updating the dog park status. They have done the internal pathways, have been laid out in cement. They've also done the ADA parking lot, restriped that, and it's ready to go. The final items they need to do are put in the water fountains out there and do the final fencing, and then we'll be able to reopen the dog park at a future date. Right now, we're anticipating another probably 2 to 3 weeks before it gets completed. Then we'll do an inspection on it to make sure it meets all the ADAs, and we'll make an announcement to the public and look forward to having a grand opening to the dog park here within the next month or so.
A re-grand opening.
Re-grand opening, yes.
Re-grand opening.
Yes.
And that's
If I could ask a question on that related to that one, I know a lot of people are excited to see that happen. The question I have been receiving from community members is, will there be any grass available in the dog park? Whether, now I don't think anyone's thinking sod, but is there a chance of any seeding to be planted?
And we are not put any grass out there. Starts out green and turns yellow after a while. If you're a dog owner, you know what I mean.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we are now going to adjourn and go into closed session. We have 3 items that we are going to discuss in closed session. One is a conference with real property negotiator, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and another with regard to anticipated litigation. So we will go into closed session, and then we will be back at the conclusion of closed session to adjourn the meeting for the evening. Thank you. I'm sorry? A property negotiator? The conference with real property negotiator. First one I said, yeah. Thank you.
Closed session on 3 items. The council was updated, no reportable action. The meeting is adjourned and until the next regularly scheduled meeting at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024.